Introduction. If you want to jump directly to the Enchiridion, the book starts at 1 minute and 33 seconds. The small book named Enchiridion, or Manual by Epictetus, had a big influence on modern thinking and philosophy. Once it was translated into common languages, it became very popular among independent thinkers, anti-Christian thinkers, and philosophers who focused on personal thoughts and feelings. Marcus Aurelius mentions Epictetus in his Meditations. Montaigne owned a copy of this book. Pascal strongly disagreed with the Stoic philosophers' extreme pride, and Frederick the Great always took the book with him during military campaigns. Epictetus was a famous Greek Stoic philosopher who lived from about 50 to 135 AD. He was born in Greece, but later came to Rome. His teachings emphasized the importance of personal freedom and integrity, advocating that true happiness comes from within and is not dependent on external circumstances. He is best known for his work, the Enchiridion. The name Epictetus means acquired or gained, and was indicative of his status as a slave. He was born into slavery, and his name serves as a reminder of his origins before he gained his freedom and became a renowned philosopher. His teachings, which emerged from his experiences as a slave and later as a free man, focused on the themes of personal freedom, resilience, and the importance of inner strength and wisdom, irrespective of one's external circumstances. The Enchiridion by Epictetus. Some things are within our control, while others are not. What we can control includes our opinions, goals, desires, dislikes, and generally anything that is our personal business. What we can't control includes our bodies, possessions, reputation, position, and broadly anything that isn't our personal business. Things within our control are naturally free, unlimited, and unobstructed, but those outside our control are fragile, dependent, limited, and external. Remember, if you mistakenly believe that things naturally beyond your control are free and assume ownership of what belongs to others, you will face obstacles, grieve, be upset, and blame both gods and humans. However, if you only claim ownership of what is truly yours and see others' possessions as they really are, no one will force you, restrict you, or blame you. You won't act against your will, no one will harm you, you won't have enemies, and you won't suffer. Thus, aiming for such significant achievements, remember not to even slightly incline towards pursuing what's beyond your control. You must completely abandon some of these pursuits and temporarily put aside others. If you seek these unattainable things while also desiring power and wealth, you might miss out on the latter while chasing the former, and you will certainly fail to achieve true happiness and freedom. So, strive to immediately dismiss any displeasing illusion saying, "You are just an illusion, not reality." Then evaluate it using your principles, especially this one, whether it pertains to what is within our control or not. If it's about something beyond our control, be ready to say it doesn't concern you. Remember that wanting something requires achieving what you want, and avoiding something requires staying away from what you don't want. Someone who doesn't get what they want is let down, and someone who encounters what they don't want is miserable. If you only avoid bad things that you can control, you'll never face anything you actually want to avoid. But if you try to avoid sickness, death, or poverty, you risk being miserable. Therefore, stop avoiding things beyond our control and focus on avoiding bad things within our control. For now, completely suppress your desires. If you desire things out of your control, you will surely be disappointed. You're not yet certain of obtaining things within your control, which are appropriate to desire. When you must pursue or avoid something, do so thoughtfully, gently, and in moderation. Regarding any objects that either bring pleasure to the mind, are useful, or are deeply cherished, consider their true nature, starting with the simplest items. If you have a cup you're fond of, remember it's just a cup, so that if it breaks, you can accept it. If you hug your child or spouse, remember they are mortal, so if they were to pass away, you could accept it. When you start any activity, remember what type of activity it is. If you're going to take a bath, imagine the common occurrences in a bathhouse. Some people pouring water, some fighting, some arguing, others stealing. You will be better prepared for this activity if you remind yourself, I am going to take a bath, and I will strive to align my desires with the natural course of events. This approach applies to all activities. Therefore, if you encounter any obstacles while bathing, you can remind yourself, my goal wasn't just to bathe, but to align my desires with nature's way, and I won't achieve this if I get upset about things that happen. People are upset not because of events themselves, but because of how they perceive these events. For example, death isn't inherently frightening. If it were, Socrates would have seen it as such. The fear comes from our belief that death is frightening, so when we're obstructed, disturbed, or saddened, we should recognize that it's due to our own perspectives, not others. Blaming others for our troubles is a sign of lack of understanding. Blaming ourselves shows we're beginning to learn, and the fully enlightened blame neither others nor themselves. Do not take pride in qualities that are not yours. If a horse were proud of its beauty, saying, "I am beautiful," it would be somewhat understandable. However, when you take pride and say, "I have a beautiful horse," remember that your pride is based on the horse's attributes, not your own. What truly belongs to you? It is how you interact with and respond to life's events. Therefore, when you align yourself with nature in this way, your pride will have some justification, because then you will be taking pride in something that is genuinely your own good. In life, much like when you're on a journey and your ship is docked, if you go ashore to gather water, you might enjoy collecting a seashell or mushroom along the way. However, you should always be mindful of your ship, ready to return if the captain summons you. In this situation, you'd have to abandon these small pleasures to avoid being forcibly brought back to the ship, like a bound sheep. Similarly, in life, it's fine to have a spouse or children, comparable to the shellfish or mushroom. But if duty calls, you should be prepared to leave everything behind without a second thought. Additionally, if you are older, stay close to your ship, so you're always available when needed. Do not insist that events occur according to your desires. Rather, hope for them to unfold as they actually do, and you will progress smoothly. Illness hinders the body, but does not affect one's will or determination unless one allows it to. Similarly, a disability like having a crippled leg hampers the functioning of the leg, but not one's willpower. Apply this perspective to all situations you encounter. You will realize that while something may be a hindrance to a particular aspect, it does not inherently obstruct your true self. In any unexpected situation, remind yourself to look inward and ask which ability you possess to handle it. If you meet someone attractive, you need self-control. If you experience pain, you need bravery. If someone insults you, you need patience. Once you're used to this approach, the various experiences of life won't overpower you. Instead of saying, "I have lost something," say, "I have given it back." If your child has passed away, you've given them back. If your spouse has died, you've given them back. If your property has been taken, that too has been given back. But a malicious person took it. Why worry about who took it when the one who gave it to you has asked for it back? As long as you're allowed to have it, treat it as something that isn't really yours, just like travelers do with their lodging at an inn. If you want to improve, stop relying on thoughts like, "If I ignore my work, I'll lose my income. If I don't discipline my servant, he'll be useless." It's better to die from hunger, free from sorrow and fear, than to live in wealth with anxiety. It's preferable for your servant to be inefficient rather than for you to be unhappy. Start with minor issues. If a bit of oil spills or a small amount of wine is taken, remind yourself, this is the cost of peace and calm. Nothing comes for free. And when you summon your servant, remember that he might not respond, or if he does, he might not fulfill your wishes. But it's not beneficial for him, and certainly harmful for you, to let his actions disturb you. If you want to improve, stop relying on thoughts like, "If I ignore my work, I'll lose my income. If I don't discipline my servant, he'll be useless." It's better to die from hunger, free from sorrow and fear, than to live in wealth with anxiety. It's preferable for your servant to be inefficient rather than for you to be unhappy. If you desire eternal life for your children, spouse and friends, it's an unrealistic wish, as it's beyond your control and involves others' lives, not just your own. Similarly, expecting your servant to be flawless is impractical, as it means wanting imperfections not to exist. However, you can avoid disappointment by focusing on what you can control. Your own actions are within your power. Whoever has the ability to grant or take away what you seek or avoid controls you. Therefore, to be truly free, avoid desiring or rejecting things that rely on others. Otherwise, you will inevitably be enslaved. Remember that you must behave as at a banquet. Is anything brought round to you? Put out your hand and take a moderate share. Does it pass by you? Do not stop it. Has it not yet come? Do not yearn in desire toward it, but wait till it reaches you. So it is when it comes to children, wife, office, and riches. And you will some time or other be worthy to feast with the gods. And if you do not so much as take the things which are set before you, but are able even to give them up, then you will not only be worthy to feast with the gods, but to rule with them also. For, by doing this, Diogenes and Heraclitus, and others like them, deservedly became divine, and were so recognized. When you observe someone crying due to sorrow, like when their child has traveled away, or they have faced difficulties in their life, be careful not to be swayed by the seeming misfortune. Instead, judge the situation critically, and be prepared to recognize that what causes this person pain is not the event itself, since it might not trouble someone else, but rather the perspective they adopt towards it. However, in your interactions, don't hesitate to empathize with them, and if necessary, share in their expression of grief. But be cautious not to let yourself also feel this grief deeply within. Keep in mind that you are a participant in a play, the nature and duration of which are determined by the playwright. Whether the play is short or long, your role is to perform diligently. If you are assigned to portray a character who is impoverished, physically impaired, a person of authority, or an ordinary citizen, ensure that you perform your role excellently. Your responsibility is to execute the assigned role with skill. The selection of the role is the privilege of someone else. When a raven croaks in a way that seems ominous, do not be swayed by superficial impressions. Instead, make a perceptive judgment and remind yourself, this omen does not signify anything harmful to me, my insignificant body, my possessions, my reputation, my children, or my spouse. In fact, all omens can be favorable if I decide they are, because whatever occurs, it is within my power to benefit from it. You are invincible if you avoid conflicts where you don't have control over the outcome. So, when you encounter someone with great honors, power, or respect, don't be dazzled and call them fortunate. If true goodness lies in what we can control, there's no need for jealousy or competition. Instead, aspire not to be a general, senator, or consul, but to be free. The key to freedom is ignoring things beyond our control. It's important to understand that it's not the person who insults or attacks us that causes offense, but rather our own perception of their actions as insulting. Therefore, when someone angers you, remember that it's your own viewpoint that's causing this reaction. First and foremost, try not to be immediately swayed by what happens. If you manage to pause and give yourself a moment, you will find it easier to control your response. Let the concepts of death, exile, and all other seemingly dreadful events be constantly in your thoughts, with a particular focus on death. By doing so, you'll avoid having a lowly mindset and won't overly desire anything. If you're genuinely interested in philosophy, be ready from the start for people to mock and scoff at you. They might say things like, "Look, he's suddenly become a philosopher," or mock your demeanor. However, don't let their words affect you. Instead, firmly stick to what you believe is right, as if you've been chosen by a higher power for this path. Remember, if you stay true to your path, those who mocked you initially will eventually respect you, but if you let them defeat you, you'll face even more ridicule. If you find yourself focusing on external matters to please others, know that you have compromised your way of living. Therefore, find satisfaction in simply being a philosopher, and if you desire to also be perceived as one by others, first and foremost convince yourself of this, and that will be enough. Don't let these worries trouble you. I will be disrespected and insignificant everywhere. If being disrespected is bad, you can't be harmed by others any more than you can be made dishonorable by them. Is it your responsibility to gain power or be invited to parties? Absolutely not. So, how can being disrespected be bad? How can you be nobody anywhere when you should only strive to be significant in areas within your control, where you can truly make a difference? But my friends won't receive help. What do you mean by not receiving help? They won't get money or political favors from you. But who said these things are under our control, rather than being others' concerns? And how can you give others what you don't have yourself? Then acquire these things, so we can benefit too. If I can obtain them without compromising my honor, loyalty, and self-respect, show me how, and I'll do it. But if you expect me to lose my integrity for you to gain something worthless, you're being unreasonable and foolish. What's more valuable, money or a trustworthy, honorable friend? Help me maintain my integrity instead of asking me to do things that would destroy it. What about my duty to my country, you ask? Again, what kind of help are you talking about? You won't be building public buildings or baths. But does that matter? A blacksmith doesn't provide shoes, nor a shoemaker weapons. It's enough if everyone does their own job well. If you become another honest, honorable citizen, won't that benefit your country? Yes. So, you're not useless to it. What role will I have in society? You ask. Take any role you can without losing your integrity and honor. But if in trying to help society, you lose these virtues, how can you be of any use to your country if you become untrustworthy and shameless? If someone is favored over you in social gatherings, in polite gestures, or in private conversations, think about it. If these things are good, you should be happy that another person has them. If they are not good, then there's no need for you to be upset about lacking them. Remember, to compete with others in external matters, you must be willing to do what they do to achieve them. How can someone who refuses to flatter or follow others have the same advantages as someone who does? It's unfair and irrational to expect to receive these benefits without paying their price, just as you can't expect to get something for nothing. For example, if milk is cheap and someone buys it for that price, while you choose not to spend your money, you haven't lost anything to the other person. They might have the milk, but you still have your money. Similarly, if you're not invited to someone's dinner party, it's because you haven't paid what it costs, which might be flattery or attention. If you want the benefit, you must pay the price. But if you want the benefit without paying the price, you're being unreasonable and foolish. Instead of feeling left out, remember what you gain. You don't have to praise someone you don't want to, and you don't have to tolerate the rudeness of their servants. The natural order can be understood from instances about which we all agree. For example, when a neighbor's child accidentally breaks a cup or something similar, we readily accept. These things happen. Therefore, when your own cup breaks, you should react the same way you did when someone else's cup broke. Extend this thinking to more significant matters. If someone else's child or spouse passes away, everyone would say, death is a part of life. However, if one's own child dies, the immediate reaction is often, oh, how terrible I feel. We should always remember how we react when we hear of similar events happening to others. As a target is not established for the purpose of being missed, so too does the nature of evil not exist in the world. If someone handed over your body to a stranger, you would undoubtedly be upset. So aren't you embarrassed about handing over your own mind to someone who insults you, allowing yourself to be disturbed and confused? In every situation, think about what comes before and after, then decide whether to proceed. If not, you might start eagerly but carelessly, ignoring potential outcomes. When these consequences arise, you'll likely stop in embarrassment. For example, wanting to win at the Olympic Games requires considering the preceding and following factors. If it benefits you, then commit to it. This involves adhering to rules, following a strict diet, avoiding treats, exercising regularly in all weather conditions, and sometimes forgoing cold water and wine. Essentially, you must dedicate yourself to your trainer as you would to a doctor. During the competition, you could fall into a pit, injure your arm or ankle, swallow a lot of dust, be reprimanded for negligence, and still possibly lose. After weighing all this, if you're still interested, go ahead with the competition. Otherwise, you'll be like children who switch from one game to another after being enthralled by different spectacles. You might find yourself changing roles frequently, from a wrestler to a gladiator, then a philosopher, and an orator, but never committing seriously to anything. You'll be like a monkey, imitating everything without sticking to anything, because you've never approached anything with thorough consideration or complete dedication, but only half-heartedly. Some people, upon encountering a philosopher or hearing someone speak with the eloquence of Euphrates, feel inspired to become philosophers themselves. However, it's important to first consider the nature of philosophy and whether it aligns with your personal capabilities and nature. For example, if you aspire to be a wrestler, you must assess your physical attributes like your shoulders, back and thighs, as different people are suited for different pursuits. Similarly, consider whether you can maintain your current lifestyle and still be a philosopher. Being a philosopher requires discipline. You need to control certain desires, distance yourself from friends, face ridicule, and accept being inferior in certain respects, such as in positions of power, honor, or in legal matters. Reflect on these challenges, and if you're willing to sacrifice to achieve peace, freedom, and calmness, then pursue philosophy. But if not, don't waver between different roles like a child who switches from being a philosopher to a tax collector, to an orator, and then to an official of Caesar. These paths are incompatible. You must choose to either develop your own reasoning or focus on external factors. Devote yourself to internal matters or external ones. In essence, choose to be either a philosopher or a part of the general populace. Responsibilities are always determined by relationships. Is a certain individual your father? This implies caring for him, obeying him in all matters, and accepting his criticisms and guidance with patience. But what if he is not a good father? The natural connection is not with a good father, but with a father nonetheless. Is your brother unfair? Then focus on maintaining your own fairness towards him. Don't dwell on his actions, but on what you need to do to keep your intentions aligned with what is morally right. Remember, no one can harm you unless you allow it. You are only harmed when you agree to be harmed. By adopting this approach, if you think about the relationships you have as a neighbor, citizen, or leader, you can figure out the duties that each of these roles entails. Be certain that true devotion to the gods is found in this, to have accurate beliefs about them, recognizing their existence and their just and good governance of the universe. Commit yourself to obeying, submitting to, and willingly following them through all situations, as they are guided by supreme wisdom. By doing so, you will never criticize or accuse the gods of neglecting you. Achieving this can only be done by focusing on what is within our control and considering only these things as good or evil. If you deem other things as good or bad, you will inevitably feel let down when your desires are unmet, or you encounter what you dislike, leading you to blame those responsible. Every being naturally avoids what seems harmful and what causes harm, and seeks what seems beneficial and its causes. Therefore, it's impossible for someone who believes they are harmed to feel joy towards the one they think is causing this harm, just as it's impossible to enjoy the harm itself. This is why a son may resent his father for not providing what seems good, as did Polynices and Eteocles, who became enemies over their desire for power. This is why farmers, sailors, merchants, or those who have lost a spouse or child may curse the gods, for our piety often aligns with our interests. In this way, managing our wants and dislikes well is also managing our faith well. Additionally, it is important for everyone to perform ritual offerings and sacrifices according to their local customs, doing so with sincerity, attention, and respect, neither too little nor too much. When you seek guidance from prophecy, remember that you don't know what the outcome will be, and you're consulting the oracle to find out. However, you should already understand the nature of the situation before you go, especially if you're philosophically minded. If the issue is beyond your control, it cannot be inherently good or bad. So, when you visit the oracle, don't bring desires or fears with you, or you'll be anxious. Instead, realize that every situation is neutral and doesn't directly affect you. How you respond to it is within your control, and no one can prevent that. Approach the gods as advisors with confidence. Then, when you receive advice, remember who your advisors are, and that ignoring their counsel is a significant choice. Follow Socrates' guidance in using prophecy. Use it only when the outcome is uncertain and cannot be determined by reason or any other method. For example, when duty calls you to share in a friend's or your country's peril, don't consult an oracle to decide if you should join them. Even if the oracle indicates bad omens, this only means that death, injury, or exile might happen, but we have internal reasoning that guides us to support our friends and country despite these risks. Pay attention to the superior guidance of the Pythian god, who once expelled someone from the temple for failing to help their friend. Start by adopting a character and demeanor that you can maintain both when alone and in company. Speak minimally, only saying what is necessary, and do so concisely. However, you can engage in conversation occasionally when the situation requires it, but avoid common topics like gladiators, horse races, athletic events, food, drink, or mundane conversations, especially avoiding discussions about people that involve criticism, praise, or comparisons. If possible, steer conversations towards more meaningful subjects. If you're with strangers, it's better to remain silent. Keep your laughter subdued, infrequent, and moderate. Refrain from making oaths as much as possible. Stay away from public and common forms of entertainment. If you must attend, remain alert to avoid slipping into vulgar behavior. Remember, even if you are virtuous, associating with someone corrupt can lead to your own corruption. Only provide for your physical needs to the extent necessary, like food, drink, clothing, shelter, and basic companionship. Avoid anything that is for show or luxury. Prior to marriage, avoid any illicit relationships with women, but do not be harsh or judgmental towards those who do. Also, do not frequently boast about your own abstention. If someone tells you that another person has spoken ill of you, don't try to justify yourself. Instead, respond by saying, "If they knew my other flaws, they wouldn't have mentioned only these." You don't need to frequently attend public events, but when it's appropriate for you to be there, focus on yourself and hope for things to happen as they should, wanting only the best outcome. Don't get caught up in cheering, mocking, or strong emotions. Afterwards, don't spend a lot of time talking about the event, especially if it doesn't contribute to your personal improvement, as it might show you were too impressed by the spectacle. Be cautious about going to private readings. If you do go, maintain your seriousness and respect, but don't be unpleasant. When planning to meet someone, especially someone you consider superior, think about how wise individuals like Socrates or Zeno would act in such a situation. This will help you handle whatever comes up. When visiting someone in a position of power, be prepared for the possibility that you might not be allowed to see them. If you still need to go, accept whatever happens without complaining that it wasn't worth it, as such an attitude is common and shows you're overly concerned with external things. In social settings, don't talk too much about your own experiences or dangers. While you might find it interesting, others may not. Also, avoid trying to make people laugh excessively, as it can lead to inappropriate behavior and might lower people's opinion of you. Stay away from indecent conversations. If someone starts such a conversation, either reprimand them or show through your silence and expressions that you disapprove of that kind of talk. If you find yourself tempted by the promise of any pleasure, be careful not to be misled by it. Instead, take your time to consider the matter and allow yourself some delay. Think about both the moment when you will experience the pleasure and the time afterwards when you might regret it and blame yourself. Compare this to how you would feel good about yourself if you resist the temptation. Even if the pleasure seems appropriate at the time, be wary of its temptations and persuasions, and remember that it is more rewarding to know you have achieved such a significant victory. When you decide to do something because you believe it is the right thing to do, do not hesitate to be seen doing it, even if others might misinterpret your actions. If what you are doing is not correct, avoid doing it in the first place. But if it is correct, there is no reason to fear criticism from those who misunderstand your intentions. This argument, "it is either day or night," works well in a disassociated either-or argument, but not in a connected both-and argument. For example, at a dinner party, choosing the biggest dish fits your physical hunger, but goes against the idea that the meal is a social event. Therefore, when dining with someone else, it's important to consider not just the nutritional value of the food being served, but also the importance of showing appropriate manners towards your host. If you've taken on a role beyond your capabilities, you have not only performed poorly in that role, but also abandoned a role you could have managed well. When walking, you are careful not to step on a nail or twist your foot. In the same way, be careful not to harm your mind's ability to make decisions. If we protect this aspect of ourselves in all our actions, we will approach our activities with greater safety. Your body is the best indicator to tell what you should own, just as a foot determines the right size of a shoe. If you stick to this principle, you'll maintain the right balance. But if you go beyond it, you'll inevitably be swept away, like falling off a cliff. In the case of a shoe, if you exceed what's necessary for the foot, it first becomes decorated with gold, then dyed purple, and finally adorned with gems. For anything that surpasses the appropriate limit, there's no stopping point. Young women feel complimented when men refer to them as mistresses. As a result, believing they are valued solely for their ability to bring pleasure to men, they start to focus on enhancing their appearance, placing all their aspirations in this. Because of this, it's worthwhile to encourage them to realize that they are respected only to the extent that they display beauty in their behavior and maintain a modest virtue. Spending a lot of time on bodily matters, such as excessive exercise, eating, drinking, and other physical functions, these activities should be done in passing, while our main focus should be on developing our intellect. When someone harms or speaks badly of you, remember that they are acting or speaking based on their belief that it's the right thing to do. They can't be expected to act according to what you think is right, but only according to what they believe is right. If their judgment is based on misunderstandings, they are the ones who suffer, as they are misled. If someone misinterprets a true statement as false, it's not the statement that's affected, but the person who is mistaken. With this understanding, you can calmly tolerate someone who insults you, thinking to yourself each time, "That's what they believe to be true." Every situation has two aspects, one manageable and the other not. If your brother behaves unfairly, avoid focusing on his unfairness, as this perspective makes it difficult to manage. Instead, consider that he is your brother and was raised alongside you. By adopting this view, you approach the situation in a way that is manageable. The arguments I will now present don't make sense logically. Because I have more wealth than you, I am superior to you. Because I speak more fluently than you, I am superior to you. A more logical reasoning would be, because I have more wealth than you, it follows that I have more possessions than you. Because I speak more fluently than you, it follows that my way of speaking is better than yours. However, you are not defined by either your wealth or your way of speaking. Does anyone bathe quickly? Do not say that he does it poorly, but quickly. Does anyone drink a lot of wine? Do not say that he is doing something wrong, but that he drinks a lot. For unless you fully understand his reasons, how can you know if his actions are wrong? In this way, you will avoid making judgments based on appearances you don't fully understand. Do not openly declare yourself a philosopher or engage in extensive discussions about your beliefs with those who are uninformed. Instead, demonstrate your principles through your actions. For example, at a social gathering, do not lecture others on how to eat, simply eat appropriately yourself. Remember how Socrates avoided showing off. When people asked him to introduce them to philosophers, he did so without seeking attention for himself. If you find yourself in a conversation about principles with those who are not well informed, it's better to remain mostly silent. Speaking hastily can be risky, especially if your ideas are not fully formed. If someone claims you know nothing and it doesn't bother you, then you are truly making progress. Just as sheep do not regurgitate their food to show how much they've eaten, but digest it and produce wool and milk, you should not showcase your principles to the uninformed. Instead, let your actions, shaped by your internalized beliefs, speak for themselves. When you learn to eat simply, don't brag about it, and if you choose to drink water, don't make a point of mentioning it all the time. Think about how the poor live more simple and endure hardships better than we do. If you ever want to train yourself to handle hard work and deprivation for your own benefit, not for others to see, don't go for extreme challenges. Instead, when you're extremely thirsty, just swish some water in your mouth and don't tell anyone. A person lacking refinement is characterized by their reliance on external factors for support or detriment, never considering their own role. In contrast, a philosopher seeks within themselves for all sources of aid or adversity. A proficient individual is recognized by their refusal to criticize, praise, blame, or accuse others. They also do not boast about their own knowledge or identity. When facing obstacles, such a person holds themselves accountable. If praised, they internally acknowledge the praise without outward show. If criticized, they offer no defense. They navigate life cautiously, like someone recovering from an illness, careful not to disturb their progress. This person controls their desires, directing their aversion only towards things that hinder their own will's proper use. They apply their efforts in moderation in all aspects, indifference to being perceived as unintelligent or uninformed. In essence, they vigilantly guard against themselves, as they would against a lurking enemy. A person who lacks sophistication depends on external things for help or harm, and doesn't consider their own actions. On the other hand, a philosopher looks inside themselves for all help or problems. A capable person is known for not criticizing, praising, blaming, or accusing others, and doesn't brag about their knowledge or who they are. When facing challenges, they take responsibility. If complimented, they quietly accept it without showing off. If criticized, they don't defend themselves. They are careful in life, like someone getting over a sickness, making sure not to undo their progress. This person controls their desires and only avoids things that stop them from using their will correctly. They don't overdo their efforts and don't mind if others think they're not smart or informed. In short, they are as careful with themselves as they would be with a hidden enemy. Follow your own rules as if they were sacred laws, and as if breaking them would be a sin. Don't worry about what others think of you. It's not your concern. Why do you keep postponing your personal growth, especially when you know what's right? You understand philosophical concepts. You've studied them. What else are you waiting for before you start improving yourself? You're not a child anymore. You're an adult. If you keep being lazy, always putting things off, and never taking action, you'll achieve nothing and remain ordinary, both in life and in death. Think of yourself as deserving to live as a mature, enlightened person. Treat what seems best to you as an unbreakable rule. When faced with situations involving pain, pleasure, fame, or disgrace, remember that this is your moment to shine, like in the Olympics. You can't postpone it. A single failure or victory here could mean the loss or gain of honor. This is how Socrates became great, constantly improving and following reason alone. Even though you're not Socrates, you should still strive to live like someone aspiring to be like him. The foremost and essential subject in philosophy concerns the practical use of principles, such as the belief that we should not lie. The second subject involves understanding the reasons behind these principles, for instance, exploring why we should not lie. The third subject provides support and logical coherence to the first two, asking questions like, what constitutes a proof? What does it mean for something to follow logically? What defines a contradiction, truth, or falsehood? This third aspect is important to justify the second, and the second is crucial because of the first. However, the most fundamental, and the one we should focus on, is the first aspect. Contrarily, we often do the opposite. We dedicate most of our time and effort to the third aspect, neglecting the first. As a result, we might find ourselves lying while simultaneously being able to explain why lying is wrong. We should always have these principles ready to use. Guide me, Zeus, and you, Destiny, to wherever your decisions have placed my fate. I will follow willingly, and if I do not, even as a wicked and miserable person, I must still follow. Anyone who properly accepts their fate is considered wise among people and understands the laws of the divine. O Crito, if this is what the gods want, let it be so. Anytus and Meletus can indeed kill me, but they cannot harm me. And that's it, my fellow philosophizing friends. If you liked the video, we hope you will hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you next time for yet another philosophical journey.